Hi warriors, welcome back to the channel of Learning Philosophy. You think people avoid you because you're quiet, but the truth is darker. Most will never tell you the real reason. Your presence threatens them. And in the next 10 minutes, you will learn exactly why your personality silently intimidates others and how to turn this hidden power into strategic dominance, not accidental destruction. In the modern world, intimidation isn't loud. It's silent. It's the power Machiavelli wrote about. The influence you create without lifting a finger, without raising your voice, without even trying. Today, we break down the 7 Machiavellian signs that you possess a personality normal people consider dangerous. These signs are not flaws, they are strategic weapons. If you know how to use them, stay until the end, because the final key will reveal the most lethal trait people fear but can never openly accuse you of. Let's begin. When you walk into a room, most people don't understand what truly unsettles them about you, but they feel it immediately. It starts with something subtle, something that requires no words, no introduction, no effort. It begins with the way your eyes move, or more accurately, how they don't move. While others scatter their attention everywhere, you lock yours onto a person or a situation with an intensity that feels almost surgical. You're not staring in anger, and you're not trying to intimidate anyone. You're simply observing, but your observation goes deeper than casual looking. It cuts through the surface, and people sense that. They feel studied, measured, evaluated, and to the insecure, being seen at that level of clarity feels like a threat. Machiavelli believed that perception is power, and when you look at people with calm precision, they feel like you're reading the motives they try to hide. You strip away their masks simply by not reacting. Most people rely on exaggerated expressions, noise, and external chaos to hide who they really are. But you don't mirror any of that. You just watch, quietly, with unwavering focus. And because they cannot tell what you're thinking, they assume you're thinking something dangerous. Humans fear the unknown more than anything predictable, and your eyes, steady, controlled, unflinching, become a mirror that reflects their own insecurities back at them. This is why the room often gets quieter around you. It's why certain people lower their voices. It's why even those who consider themselves confident sometimes shift in their seat when you look at them for more than a second. It's not because you are doing anything wrong. It's because most individuals are not used to being seen without filters. They are accustomed to shallow attention, fast glances, and fragmented focus. When confronted with someone whose gaze is direct, deliberate, and piercing, they interpret it as dominance. They interpret it as a form of psychological X-ray vision. And dominance, especially the quiet kind, makes average people uncomfortable. You don't have to say a word. Your silence speaks. Your presence speaks. Your eyes speak. You create a tension that others cannot explain but definitely feel. It forces them to question themselves. It forces them to examine their own weaknesses. It forces them to wonder what you know that they don't. Machiavelli taught that power is strongest when it is invisible, and your gaze is the perfect example of invisible power. You don't raise your voice. You don't show aggression. You simply look, and that alone shifts the atmosphere. Fear. The strategic move is not to soften your gaze or pretend to be less perceptive. Instead, you refine the way you use it. Controlled eye contact becomes more potent when paired with subtle nods, minimal movement, and steady breathing. You don't need to glare or intimidate. Your strength comes from precision, not pressure. Each moment of eye contact, when used deliberately, becomes a silent declaration that you are fully present, fully aware, and not easily manipulated. People will adjust their tone around you. They will choose their words more carefully. They will reveal their true intentions simply because your attention exposes the lies they normally get away with. This is not an accident. It's a natural consequence of having a mind that watches before it reacts, sees before it speaks, evaluates before it chooses a path. Most people speak to be heard. You speak only when there's something worth saying, and that alone separates you from the noise that fills every room. Your silence is not emptiness. It's calculation. It's control. It's the awareness that every word has weight, and you refuse to waste yours. When others rush to fill silence because they feel uncomfortable, you let it breathe. You let it stretch. You let it work in your favor. And the moment you do that, the dynamic shifts. People begin to project assumptions onto you, assumptions that often reveal more about their fears than your intentions. Your quiet nature forces others to reveal themselves. When you aren't talking, when you aren't interrupting, when you aren't competing for attention, you turn into a psychological mirror. People start oversharing. They start explaining things you didn't ask for. They start over-justifying themselves, trying to fill the vacuum that your silence creates. Machiavelli understood this phenomenon. Well, people fear those who do not need validation from the crowd. When you stay silent, you communicate that you don't need approval, you don't need attention, and you don't need to prove anything. And that alone is enough to intimidate the ones who depend on external recognition to survive. Your silence is power because it forces others to wonder what you know. It leaves them questioning your thoughts, your opinions, your motives. When someone can't read you, they cannot predict you. When they cannot predict you, they cannot control you. And when they cannot control you, you become a threat to their sense of order. People are most afraid of what they can't categorize, and your measured silence places you outside of the boxes they normally use to keep themselves comfortable. And the truth is, you often catch more information by listening than by speaking. You notice the cracks in people's stories. You hear the insecurity hidden between their words. You observe the way they scramble to impress the room. All of that gives you leverage, not because you want to dominate them, but because understanding people deeply gives you an advantage in every environment. While they try to figure you out, you've already decoded them. While they ramble, you're analyzing. While they reveal their weaknesses, you're mentally mapping your next move. But this kind of presence can make others uneasy. They can't handle when someone refuses to overshare, refuses to gossip, refuses to reveal their feelings on command. Silence makes them face who they are without distraction, and most people don't like who they are when confronted with clarity. So they call you mysterious, distant, cold, intimidating, because it's easier to label you than to admit they're uncomfortable. Lay with themselves in your presence. The strategic refinement is to speak with intention. When you do choose to talk, people stop and listen. They lean in. They pay attention. Your words land harder because they are not buried under useless chatter. You've trained the room to value your voice by not giving it away cheaply. And every sentence you deliver becomes a calculated strike, sharp, precise, and impossible to ignore. When chaos erupts around you, something interesting happens. While everyone else scrambles, reacts, over-explains, and loses control, you remain still, grounded, unmoved. Your emotional neutrality becomes the center of gravity in the room, and people don't know how to handle that. They're used to emotional turbulence. They're used to people mirroring their energy, matching their panic, or responding with the same intensity. But you don't give them that satisfaction. Instead, you hold your posture. Your breath stays steady. Your expression remains unreadable. And that calmness, that refusal to react, sends a shockwave through anyone who expected you to crumble with them. This is where intimidation starts, not from aggression, but from stability. Emotional stability is one of the rarest traits in any environment because most people are controlled by their impulses. They're driven by insecurity, ego, and the need to be understood. You, on the other hand, don't rush to defend yourself. You don't jump to correct someone's misunderstanding. And you don't engage in emotional theatrics. Your silence becomes a shield. Your restraint becomes a signal. It tells people that you're not playing the same game they are, and that alone makes you unpredictable. Machiavelli observed that the person who cannot be rattled is often the person who cannot be defeated, because emotional outbursts reveal weaknesses you never show. When someone tries to provoke you and you stay calm, they start questioning their own influence. They start losing confidence. They start losing momentum. What they intended as a power move suddenly collapses on itself because you refused to give them the reaction they needed to feel strong. And nothing threatens an insecure person more than their inability to shake someone who refuses to collapse. People interpret your emotional neutrality as coldness, but it's not coldness. It's mastery. It's the recognition that reacting emotionally, gives away power. The world teaches people to express every feeling, to externalize every discomfort, to justify every insecurity. You do the opposite. You internalize, assess, and respond only when it's necessary, and this makes you appear larger, stronger, and more composed than the people around you. They feel like you're operating at a different frequency, one where their emotional chaos simply doesn't reach you. This also changes how people speak to you. They choose their words more carefully. They avoid unnecessary drama. They stop trying to dominate conversations with emotional pressure because they know it won't work on you. You create an emotional boundary without having to announce it, and that boundary forces everyone around you to either rise to your level or get exposed by their own instability. Either way, your presence dictates the emotional terms of the interaction. And the truth is, you weren't trying to intimidate anyone. This calmness is simply your default. You don't rush because you don't fear. You don't panic because you've seen enough to understand that panic solves nothing. You don't explode because you refuse to let others hijack your mind. This is why people come to you during a crisis, even when they feel intimidated by you. They understand, even subconsciously, that you are the person who doesn't collapse under pressure. Your calmness becomes an anchor in a world full of reaction-driven personalities. To refine this power, you learn to show just enough presence, small nods, subtle breaths, a slight shift in posture, to remind people you are engaged, not detached. This controlled expression communicates that your calmness is intentional, not apathetic. And once people understand that your steadiness is a choice, not a limitation, they begin to respect it on a deeper level. They start seeing you as someone who doesn't merely control emotions, you command the entire atmosphere around you. Most people don't realize how much of their identity is borrowed. Their opinions are recycled from the crowd. Their morals are shaped by whatever group they want acceptance from. Their values shift depending on who's watching. But your thinking doesn't bend that easily. You don't follow trends, social expectations, or group-approved beliefs just to fit in. You rely on your own judgment, your own logic, and your own internal compass. And that indents, that refusal to bow to social pressure, is exactly what makes people label you as intimidating or dangerous. Because the moment you stop needing the crowd starts fearing you. This kind of self-governed morality, your moral independence, confuses people who rely on external rules to understand the world. They don't know what drives you, what limits you, what motivates you. You aren't guided by fear of being disliked, and you aren't immobilized by the need to conform. That makes you unpredictable. Machiavelli wrote that those who cannot be influenced or bribed by public opinion possess a type of strength: rulers, fear, and envy. When you choose your own path, you send a silent message. You cannot be swayed, guilted, or manipulated into doing something that goes against your internal logic. And in modern society, this is rare. Most individuals will adjust their beliefs just to avoid judgment, even if they betray themselves in the process. But you don't trade authenticity for approval. You're willing to stand alone if you must. You're willing to face criticism. You're willing to appear different. Because you refuse to dilute your mind to match the crowd's mediocrity. And that level of internal authority makes people uncomfortable, not because you're wrong, but because your independence highlights their dependence. When others cling to group thinking, you question it. When they repeat popular narratives, you analyze them. When they blindly follow trends, you watch them with quiet amusement, noting how the world convinces them that conformity equals safety. But you've learned something the majority never will. True safety comes from self-reliance, not social approval. When you operate from your own principles, you move with a kind of confidence that doesn't need applause to exist. That confidence becomes intimidating to anyone who relies on others to define their self-worth. People will sometimes test you to see if they can sway your viewpoint. They'll poke, challenge, or question your decisions because they expect you to eventually bend the way everyone else does. But when you remain steady in your reasoning, they start to realize that you're not built like them. You don't crumble under pressure. You don't shift your stance because someone raises their voice. And you don't abandon your beliefs because they become unpopular. Instead, you reinforce your internal walls. You become stronger in the face of resistance. And that resilience makes people step back, reassessing you with a mix of respect and unease. What they don't understand is that your independence isn't rebellion, it's clarity. You see the world as it is, not as society wants it to be. You make decisions based on strategy, not emotional groupthink. You're loyal to your own logic, not the validation of strangers, and that is why your presence disrupts the mental security of others. It exposes how little of their thinking is truly theirs. It reveals how quickly they bend to avoid friction. It shows them how easily they are influenced by external voices, while you remain anchored in your own. When you stand firm in your principles, it forces people to confront the fact that their beliefs are fragile, and fragile beliefs always fear strong ones. Your independence becomes a mirror that reflects their dependency, and once they see that, they can't unsee it. That is why they call you intimidating. They don't fear you, they fear what you reveal about them when they're standing next to someone who refuses to kneel. When someone tries to manipulate you, something unexpected happens. They hit a wall they didn't see coming. Most people are easy to sway because they react instantly to flattery, pressure, guilt, or fake kindness. But you don't. You don't move just because someone wants you to. You don't bend because someone acts disappointed. You don't shift your choices because someone suddenly raises their voice or plays the victim. You read intentions like a map. You see the emotional traps before they're even set. You recognize the difference between genuine connection and strategic manipulation, and that awareness alone makes you incredibly difficult to control. This resistance to influence unnerves people, especially those who depend on manipulation to get their way. They expect you to be predictable. They expect you to be easily swayed by emotion. They expect you to react the way everyone else does, quickly, emotionally, blindly. Instead, you pause, you listen, you analyze, you let their words hang in the air while you scrutinize them, dissecting their motives piece by piece. And the moment they realize you aren't falling for their script, they start losing confidence in the IR power. They start adjusting their tone. They start hesitating, because they're suddenly aware that they're dealing with someone who sees through the performance they've used on countless others. Machiavelli wrote that the most dangerous person in the room is the one who cannot be bought with flattery or broken with fear. When you refuse to be emotionally bribed, you shift the balance of power in every conversation. Manipulators depend on your desire for approval, but you don't crave their approval. They depend on your instinct to avoid conflict, but you don't fear conflict. They depend on your impulse to respond quickly, but you take your time. And the more you make them work for influence they can't secure, the more you expose the limits of their control. This is why people sometimes accuse you of being stubborn or distant. But the truth is, you're neither. You're simply immune to surface-level tactics. You don't jump when someone dangles praise in front of you, and you don't crumble when they express disappointment. You don't chase validation, so you cannot be led like someone who does. Your value doesn't depend on external opinions, so you're not vulnerable to emotional traps disguised as concern. And when you respond calmly instead of emotionally, manipulators have no leverage over you. They're performers waiting for applause that never comes, and your refusal to participate destabilizes them. Your ability to stand still while others attempt to steer you gives you an aura of unpredictability. People can't figure out what will sway you because the usual tricks don't work. And when they can't influence you, they start seeing you as dangerous. Not because you're doing anything harmful, but because your independence makes their manipulation useless. You become someone who is mentally untouchable, someone whose mind cannot be hijacked by emotional bait. And here's the interesting part. Your resistance to manipulation doesn't make you harsh. It makes you clear. You don't assume every gesture is pure, you evaluate it. You don't assume every story is true, you verify it. You don't assume someone's kindness is free, you observe the pattern. This clarity allows you to interact with the world without being swallowed by it. You treat people fairly, but you don't let anyone drag you into their chaos. You offer respect, but you demand mutual integrity. You give attention, but only to those who don't try to weaponize it. When manipulators see that you refuse to fall into their emotional quicksand, they either retreat or expose their true nature, and both outcomes serve you. Because anyone who grows frustrated when they can't control you was never meant to be close to you. People who respect clarity stay. People who rely on manipulation leave. Your strength filters your environment automatically. This is the power of being influence-proof. It doesn't just protect your mind, it protects your entire life. There is a moment, always the same, always predictable, when someone looks at you a little too long, pauses before speaking, or chooses their words with exaggerated care. That moment reveals everything. They're not just aching to you, they're calibrating themselves around you. They're managing their tone, adjusting their posture, softening their edges. Why? Because your presence alone carries weight. You don't need to raise your voice, you don't need to posture, you don't need to dominate the room physically. Your existence shifts the atmosphere, your energy sets the emotional temperature, and people feel that more deeply than they will ever admit. This commanding presence doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from consistency. You don't wobble back and forth trying to impress people. You don't shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You don't invite chaos into your space. You show up the same way every time, composed, controlled, intentional. And people start adjusting themselves to fit the level you operate at. They sense that you won't entertain nonsense, and they try to remove their nonsense before speaking. They sense that you won't reward emotional games, so they try to act more rational. They sense that your boundaries are firm, so they straighten their posture around you without knowing why. What intimidates them is not you. It's the version of themselves they become when they stand next to you. They start becoming hyper-aware of their language, their gestures, and even their thoughts. Their insecurities rise to the surface because your presence leaves no space for pretense. It forces authenticity, and most people aren't comfortable being authentic. They're used to wearing masks, but masks don't survive in front of someone who doesn't play the same shallow games. Machiavelli understood this phenomenon clearly. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the silent discipline of a person who knows who they are. When you walk into a room, people feel that discipline. They feel that you aren't moved by their approval or their disapproval. They feel that your sense of self is not something they can influence or damage, and that creates a psychological distance they don't know how to bridge. It makes you feel untouchable, even if you're not trying to be. Your presence has gravity because it comes from a place most people never reach: internal alignment. You're not pulled in 1,000 directions by insecurity. You're not dependent on a crowd for self-worth. You're not shaped by the expectations of others. You stand on something stable, and that stability radiates outward. People sense that you're not pretending. They sense that your confidence is not inflated, it's earned. And earned confidence is intimidating because it cannot be questioned by weak minds. This presence also changes how people approach you. They rarely bring casual, frivolous conversations. They bring questions, concerns, or confessions. They sense that you're not here to waste time. They sense that your mind operates on a deeper layer, and that awareness makes them choose their topics carefully. People often reveal more to you than they intend, because your presence makes them feel both exposed and compelled to be honest. And when someone feels exposed without you even trying, they automatically see you as powerful. Your presence also acts as a filter. Weak personalities avoid you because your energy exhausts their illusions. Empty people avoid you because your depth highlights their shallowness. Manipulative people avoid you because their tactics collapse in your atmosphere. Meanwhile, strong personalities feel drawn to you because your presence confirms their own discipline. People who operate with integrity recognize the strength you carry and respond with respect rather than fear. But the real source of your intimidating presence is simple. You don't seek dominance, but you never surrender it either. You don't force power, yet you never sacrifice it to comfort others. Your silence has weight, your attention has value, your boundaries have structure, and your mind has clarity. When someone stands in front of all that, they cannot remain neutral. They either rise, retreat, or reveal their true nature. Your presence reveals the truth in people. It exposes insecurities, unmasks pretenders, and stabilizes those who are ready to grow. And this is why people call you dangerous. because in a world full of facades, you show up real. And nothing is more intimidating than someone who doesn't need the world to tell them who they are. These 7 signs, the abyss gaze, the silent authority, the unshakable frame, the moral independence, the psychological distance, the calculated presence, and the discrete power mind, are not weaknesses. They are the architecture of a naturally dangerous, naturally intimidating personality. You have 2 choices: suppress them or master them. The world respects power, so respect your own, claim your sovereignty, and if you want to go even deeper into the psychology of dominance, the next video will expose the 5 behaviors that make you untouchable. Click it. Your rise begins there.